There are moments in global finance that don't arrive with fireworks or headlines. They arrive quietly, as small notices sent to the banks that move the world's money. They slip into inboxes with polite phrasing and no drama. But years later, these are the moments people point to and say, that was the turning point. That was when everything underneath the surface began to change. Everything here is for educational and entertainment purposes only, not financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. If clear, no hype crypto education helps you make sense of all this. Hit like and subscribe. It tells YouTube this series is worth showing to other newcomers, and it helps me keep building it for you. This weekend is one of those moments. SWIFT, the backbone of international banking, is shutting off part of its 50-year-old messaging system and replacing it with something completely different. The old MT format that has carried global payments for half a century is ending. An ISO 20022, a structured, modern, machine-readable language, is becoming mandatory for bank-to-bank communication around the world. On the surface, it sounds like a simple technical upgrade, a formatting change, a new template. But it's not. This shift changes the data layer of global money, the foundation every payment, every settlement, and every compliance check depends on. When that layer changes, everything built on top of it gains the ability to evolve. Before going further, it's worth explaining what ISO actually is, because the acronym can sound more intimidating than it is. ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization, the global body that creates the technical standards used everywhere in modern life. Currency codes like USD and EUR, country codes, date formats, time formats, and thousands of financial and technical specifications come from ISO. They define how the world agrees to describe the things it uses. ISO 20022 is just one standard in that massive catalog. The number 20022 isn't a year, and it isn't symbolic. It's simply the identifier ISO assigned to this specific financial messaging model. But the number itself isn't what matters. What matters is what it represents. For the first time in modern history, the world's financial system is speaking one unified, structured, machine-readable language after decades of fragmented, inconsistent formats patched together through manual workarounds. For decades, global payments relied on MT messages, a format designed in the 1970s, long before the internet, modern compliance, or real-time systems existed. MT messages are short, rigid text fields. They leave little room for context, metadata, or detailed instructions. Banks built entire departments simply to interpret these messages, fix errors, perform manual checks, and reconcile settlements. A payment that looks simple on the surface often involved a dozen behind-the-scenes steps, each vulnerable to delay or human error. ISO 20022 is a complete break from that era. Instead of short text strings, it uses structured data with clear labels, organized components, purpose codes, unique identifiers, regulatory flags, and machine-readable attributes. A payment message under this standard tells systems exactly who sent the money, who received it, what it's for, what rules apply, and how it should be processed. It's richer. It's more descriptive. It's built for automation. And that is why this moment matters. Structured data is the foundation required for everything finance is moving toward. Automated compliance, intelligent routing, real-time settlement, tokenized deposits, regulated stablecoins, 24/7 corporate treasury flows, and programmable payments that execute based on conditions instead of human intervention. Most people won't notice anything this weekend. Their bank apps will look the same. Their cards will swipe. Their transfers will go through. But deep inside the systems that settle trillions every day, everything is changing. Because the world finally has a modern, unified data standard that new infrastructure can understand. And that brings us to Ripple. For more than a decade, Ripple wasn't building a retail crypto product or chasing speculation cycles. They were building an institutional-grade settlement system designed for banks, corporations, payment providers, and regulated financial institutions. They built it around structured data, long before the world formally adopted it. Ripple began with custody. The institutional vaults banks and corporates need before they can safely hold or move any type of digital value. Without custody, nothing else happens. Ripple built and acquired custody systems engineered for secure storage, multiple layers of approval, enterprise permissions, and regulatory oversight. This became the foundation of their entire stack. Next came liquidity, the ability for institutions to source capital on demand. Traditional liquidity solutions are slow, fragmented, and constrained by pre-funded accounts spread around the world. Ripple built liquidity software that lets institutions access capital in real time, rather than waiting for multi-day correspondent banking chains. After that came treasury integration. Corporations handle immense cash flows, paying suppliers, repatriating funds, running payroll, settling intercompany balances, and managing foreign currency exposures. Ripple didn't ask corporations to adopt new software. Instead, they integrated settlement rails directly into the treasury systems companies already use. The front end stays the same. The rails underneath simply become faster and more efficient. Ripple then expanded into global payout networks, the infrastructure required to deliver payments into emerging markets, remote regions, and local payment systems. Through partnerships with banks, fintechs, and local providers, they built a payout web spanning more than 100 countries, supporting everything from bank transfers to mobile money to local currency payouts. At the core of all this sits the settlement engine, the XRP ledger, designed for fast, deterministic settlement with predictable costs. Unlike systems that rely on slow reconciliation or probabilistic finality, the XRP ledger settles transactions quickly and reliably, aligning perfectly with the structured data messaging ISO 20022 enables. In Ripple's architecture, XRP functions as a neutral bridge asset, a way to move value between currencies without requiring banks to pre-fund accounts scattered across the world. RLUSD, Ripple's regulated stablecoin, provides a digital cash leg that institutions can use for settlement with regulatory clarity. Together, they form a settlement model that eliminates unnecessary intermediaries, trapped capital, and operational drag. For years, this architecture looked early, maybe too early. Banks were still using MT messages. Compliance systems weren't capable of automation. Regulators were still modernizing. The world wasn't ready for real-time settlement rails, even if the technology already existed. Now, the world is ready. Here's what most people still misunderstand. Banks do not need to adopt crypto to use Ripple's system. They don't need to rewrite their software. They don't need to switch away from Swift. They don't even need to understand how the settlement engine works under the hood. They simply send ISO 20022 messages, the same messages they are now required to send, and the systems beneath them route settlement across whichever rails are most efficient. Swift still moves the messages. Banks still use the same screens. Nothing changes on the surface, but everything changes underneath. This is the quiet brilliance of Ripple's design. They built the engine before the world built the roads. And now the world is finally paving the roads to match the engine they've had ready for years. To understand why this matters, picture the old correspondent banking chain. Multiple intermediaries, multiple hops, capital trapped in foreign accounts, repeated compliance checks, and settlement timelines measured in days. Every step adds friction. Every delay adds cost. Every cost increases the barrier to global financial access. Now imagine the opposite, a world where each payment carries structured, machine-readable data, purpose codes, compliance markers, unique identifiers, automated instructions, In that world, routing can happen instantly. Compliance checks run automatically. Settlement finalizes the moment value arrives. Liquidity moves on demand instead of sitting idle. Systems operate 24/7, without slowing down for weekends or holidays. Every capability in this new system depends on structured data, and ISO 20022 is that structured data. Ripple's stack maps perfectly to this upgraded world. Custody aligns with secure digital asset storage. Liquidity aligns with fast capital access. Treasury integration aligns with automated workflows. Payout networks align with global coverage. Wallet fabric aligns with enterprise-grade permissions. And the settlement engine aligns with the speed and reliability modern finance now requires. You don't need to understand every technical detail to recognize the significance. When the world upgrades its language, the systems built for that language rise to the surface. And now we reach the payoff. The big bow on top, the reason this weekend matters far more than it first appears. Ripple never needed the world to adopt a blockchain. They needed the world to adopt better data. ISO 20022 is that data. It is the universal translator that lets modern settlement engines connect to legacy financial infrastructure. It lets banks keep their familiar systems while gaining access to faster, more efficient rails. It gives regulators clearer insight. It gives corporations faster liquidity. It frees institutions from the inefficiencies of pre-funded accounts. Ripple spent years building for a world that didn't exist yet. Now that world is here. The messaging layer has finally caught up to the settlement layer, and the door to real-time global settlement, a door shut for half a century, is finally beginning to open. This weekend won't dominate headlines. It won't become a trending topic. But beneath the surface, this is the moment global finance becomes compatible with the rails that will define its future. The world didn't just update its messages. It changed the language of money itself. And that shift is exactly what Ripple has been preparing for since the beginning. There's one more angle worth mentioning, not as a prediction, but as something to watch over the next few years. When new settlement rails come online, institutions never open the fire hose on day one. They ramp slowly, corridor by corridor, volume by volume. And every time they expand capacity, liquidity has to stretch to meet that demand. That's where things get interesting, because while everyone talks about XRP's total supply, very little of it is actually liquid. Between long-term holders, institutional reserves, corporate treasuries, exchanges, Flare, locking for DeFi, platforms like Evernorth, strategic reserves, wrapped assets, and Ripple-managed escrow timelines, the true liquid supply is likely a fraction of the headline number. Some analysts believe it may be only a few billion units, not 100 billion. That doesn't guarantee anything about price, and nothing here should ever be taken as a price prediction. But it does mean this. As real settlement volume ramps over time, the system will start signaling where liquidity is tightest. And those pressure points are worth paying very close attention to. This channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and is not financial advice. Always do your own research and keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with a friend.